Her groom refused to take her baby too. The cowboy built a cradle before she even asked. She had always believed that love could fix broken things. That belief had carried her through many long nights, through whispers behind her back, through moments when she held her baby close and wondered what kind of future waited for them. On the morning of her wedding, she woke before the sun, listening to the quiet sounds of the small house she rented on the edge of town. Her baby slept beside her, breathing softly, unaware that this day was supposed to change everything. She moved carefully so she would not wake the child. The floor was cold under her feet, and the air smelled faintly of dust and old wood. She looked at the simple white dress hanging on the door. It was not fancy. It did not come from a shop with bright lights or mirrors. A friend had helped adjust it to fit her, sewing late into the night. As she touched the fabric, she felt hope rise in her chest. Today, she told herself, things would finally be easier. She fed the baby, changed the clothes, and smiled when the small hand wrapped around her finger. That grip gave her strength. She whispered promises she had made many times before, promises of safety, of love, of never leaving. The baby answered with a soft sound, and for a moment the world felt calm. The groom had said he loved her. He had said he was ready to start fresh. When he proposed, he spoke about a house, a shared life and respect. He never spoke much about the baby, but she believed that silence meant acceptance. She believed that once they were married, everything would fall into place. She believed him because she wanted to. As the day moved forward, neighbors stopped by to help. One woman brushed her hair. Another adjusted the dress. Their smiles were polite but careful. In a small town, nothing stays secret for long. Everyone knew the child was not the groom's. Everyone knew her past held pain she did not speak about. Still, she held her head high. She was not ashamed of her baby. She was proud. When it was time to leave, she placed the baby gently against her shoulder and walked outside. The sun was already high, warming the dry ground. The ceremony was planned near the old barn, decorated with simple flowers and wooden benches. She could see people gathering from a distance. Laughter floated through the air. For a moment, her heart raced with nervous excitement. The groom stood near the front, talking to someone. When he saw her approaching, his smile appeared, but it did not reach his eyes. She noticed it, but pushed the thought aside. People are nervous on wedding days, she told herself. This is normal. She reached him, and the talking stopped. His eyes moved from her face to the baby in her arms. The silence stretched longer than it should have. She shifted slightly, trying to ease the baby's weight, but also to steady herself. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Her stomach tightened. "Now," she asked. "Everyone is here." "I meant what I said about marrying you," he began. "I care about you, but this," he nodded toward the baby, "this is different." "You never said that," she replied. "You knew my baby was part of my life." "You want me to give up my child," she said slowly. "I want us to have a future," he answered. "This is the only way. There is no us without my child. How can you ask this of me?" She adjusted the baby in her arms, kissed the small forehead, and turned away from him. The people nearby sensed what was happening. Conversation stopped. Faces filled with confusion. She walked past the benches, past the flowers, past the place where she was supposed to promise her life to someone who could not accept all of her. Each step felt heavy, but also freeing. Her dress brushed against the dirt, but she did not care. Someone called her name, but she did not turn around. She reached her truck, opened the door, and carefully placed the baby inside. As she slid into the driver's seat, her hands shook. For a moment, she rested her forehead against the steering wheel and let the tears fall silently. She cried not just for the wedding that never happened, but for the trust she had given, for the future she had imagined, for the pain of realizing she had been asked to choose between love and motherhood. And she knew, without question, that she had made the only choice she ever could. She started the engine and drove away. The barn grew smaller in the mirror until it disappeared completely. Ahead of her was uncertainty, struggle, and judgment, but beside her was her baby, safe and warm. As the road stretched out before her, she wiped her tears and took a deep breath. Her heart was broken, but it was still strong. She did not know what would come next, but she knew this. She would never regret choosing her child. And somewhere deep inside, though she could not yet see it, the path she chose that day was quietly leading her toward a different kind of love, one that would not ask her to leave anything behind. She did not go far that day. She drove until the road turned quiet and the houses thinned out, then stopped near an open field where tall grass moved gently in the wind. She turned off the engine and sat there, holding the steering wheel, listening to her own breathing. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of how much had changed in just 1 hour. She stepped out of the truck and lifted the baby carefully, resting the small head against her shoulder. The air smelled clean, like earth and dry grass. She rocked slowly, letting the silence calm her shaking heart. There was no one to impress now, no one to explain herself to, only her child and the truth. By the time she returned home, the sun was beginning to sink. The small house greeted her with its familiar creaks and shadows. She placed the baby in the worn crib near the window and sat on the edge of the bed. The white dress felt heavy, like it belonged to someone else. She changed into simple clothes and folded the dress neatly, placing it in a box under the bed. She was not angry at it. It was just part of a story that had ended. That night was long. Sleep came in short pieces. Every time the baby stirred, she woke, checking, holding, comforting. In the quiet hours, her thoughts returned again and again to the same moment. The groom's face, his words, his refusal. She wondered how long he had felt that way. She wondered if she had ignored signs because she was afraid to be alone. Morning came with pale light through the curtains. Life did not pause for heartbreak. She prepared a simple breakfast, fed the baby, and made a list in her mind of what needed to be done. Work, bills, food, childcare. The future felt heavy, but she did not let herself sink. She had learned long ago that survival does not wait for feelings to settle. News travels fast in small towns. By midday, she felt it everywhere. The way people looked at her when she passed. The way conversations stopped just a second too late. At the store, the cashier avoided her eyes. Outside, 2 women whispered without shame. She did not need to hear the words to understand them. She should have tried harder. She reminded herself that these people did not live her life. They did not wake in the night to comfort her child. They did not feel the weight she carried every day. A few people surprised her. An older neighbor left a basket of bread at her door without saying a word. Another woman smiled gently and asked how the baby was doing. Those small acts mattered more than anyone realized. They reminded her that kindness still existed, even when judgment was loud. Work was harder than before. She took extra hours whenever she could, bringing the baby along when allowed, relying on favors when necessary. Some days she returned home so tired that her hands shook. On those nights, she would sit on the floor beside the crib and whisper stories to her child, stories about strength and love and better days ahead. Loneliness crept in quietly, not the loud kind, but the soft, aching kind that shows up at the end of the day when the house is quiet. She missed having someone to share worries with, someone to ask how her day was. But every time that thought came, she remembered the choice she had been asked to make, and the loneliness felt easier than regret. The groom tried to reach out once. A short message, a weak apology. He said he hoped she was well. She read it, held the phone for a long moment, then put it down without replying. There was nothing left to say. Some doors close for a reason. Weeks passed. Then months. Her routine became steady. Wake early, care for the baby, work, home, repeat. She learned to find joy in small moments, the baby's first laugh, the way tiny fingers grabbed her hair, the peaceful sound of breathing during sleep. Those moments filled the empty spaces inside her. She also learned how strong she really was, stronger than she had ever given herself credit for. Each challenge she faced alone added another layer of confidence. She was no longer waiting for someone to save her. She was building a life with her own hands. Still, the town did not forget. Invitations stopped coming. Friendly faces turned distant. She felt herself becoming an outsider in a place she had lived all her life. Some days that hurt more than she wanted to admit. But she refused to let bitterness take root. One evening after a long day, she sat on the small porch holding her baby and watching the sky turn orange. A truck passed on the road, slow and dusty. She barely noticed it. Her focus was on the warmth of the small body against her, the steady rhythm of breathing that reminded her why she kept going. She thought about the future often. Not in big dreams, but in practical steps, saving a little money, fixing what she could around the house, teaching her child kindness and courage. She did not know what love would look like for her now or if it would come again at all. But she knew one thing for certain: if it did, it would have to accept her whole life, not just the easy parts. There were nights when fear returned. What if she failed? What if she could not provide enough? On those nights she reminded herself of how far she had already come. She had survived worse. She would survive this too. As the seasons changed, something inside her settled. The sharp pain of rejection softened into a quiet lesson. She no longer questioned her decision. She no longer replayed the moment in her mind. It became part of her past, not her present. She did not realize it yet, but her quiet strength was being noticed. Not by those who talked the most, but by those who watched closely. By someone who valued actions over words. By someone who understood that real love shows itself not in demands, but in acceptance. For now, she focused on what was in front of her. A child who depended on her. A life that needed building. And a heart that, though wounded, was still open enough to believe that better days were possible. She closed the door each night knowing she had chosen truth over comfort, courage over fear. And even when the road felt lonely, she walked it with steady steps, carrying what mattered most, never once looking back. Life settled into a quiet pattern, the kind built from habit rather than comfort. Each day looked much like the one before, yet none of them felt empty. She learned to move through her hours with purpose. Wake up before sunrise, prepare for work, feed the baby, leave the house with determination, even when sleep still weighed heavy on her eyes. Not far from her small place stood a wide stretch of land marked by fences, cattle, and an old ranch house that had seen many seasons. That was where he worked. Most people in town simply called him the cowboy. He was not known for talking much, and he did not attend gatherings or involve himself in gossip. He kept to his work, rising early and returning late, his life shaped by routine and responsibility. He had noticed her long before others did. Not in the way men sometimes notice women, but in the quiet way observant people notice strength. He saw her carrying the baby with one arm while managing work with the other. He saw how she never complained, even when tasks were hard. He saw how she listened more than she spoke. The first time he truly noticed her was not on her wedding day, but weeks before. She had come to help with a small job near the ranch, baby wrapped close to her chest. The sun was high and the work was tiring. While others rested, she kept going, stopping only to check on the child. He watched from a distance, saying nothing. After that, he noticed small details. How she always thanked people, even when they offered little. How she stood firm when spoken to with doubt. How she smiled at her baby in a way that made the world around her feel softer. He never asked questions. He did not want to know her story from rumors. He believed that people shared what mattered when they were ready. Instead, he offered help in quiet ways. A broken fence near her place would suddenly be fixed. Extra firewood would appear stacked neatly by her door before winter. A loose step would be repaired without explanation. At first, she thought it was coincidence. Then she realized someone was paying attention. She noticed him too, though she did not know what to make of it. He never stayed long. Never waited for thanks. Sometimes she would catch sight of his truck disappearing down the road. When she did manage to thank him, he only nodded, as if helping was no big thing. There was comfort in that. No pressure, no expectations. Their first real conversation happened on an ordinary afternoon. She was struggling with a heavy load while holding the baby. He stopped nearby, hesitated for a moment, then stepped in without a word. He lifted the weight easily and set it where it needed to go. "Thank you," she said, slightly embarrassed. "Any time," he replied simply. That was it. No personal questions, no advice. Just a moment shared, then he moved on. Yet that small exchange stayed with her longer than she expected. As weeks passed, these small moments added up. A greeting in passing, a nod of understanding, a short conversation about the weather or work, nothing more. But she felt something she had not felt in a long time: respect. He never treated her differently because she had a child, never looked surprised when she arrived with the baby, never offered unwanted opinions. To him, her life simply was what it was. From his side, he felt a growing pull he did not rush to name. He admired her resilience. He respected her choices, even without knowing all the details. He had lived long enough to understand that life was rarely simple, and that the strongest people were often those who carried the heaviest loads quietly. He noticed the baby too. The way the child watched everything with wide eyes. The way calm returned instantly when held by her. He saw how she adjusted her pace to the child's needs without frustration. It reminded him of something important: care given without conditions. One evening, as the days grew shorter, he saw her struggling again. The baby was growing fast, and the basket she used was clearly no longer safe or comfortable. He noticed how she adjusted pillows and blankets, trying to make do. She did not complain. She did not ask for help. That night, as he returned to the ranch, the thought stayed with him. He ate dinner in silence, his mind working. He was not a man of big speeches or emotional gestures. But he believed that if you could help someone, you should. In the workshop behind the ranch house, he stood for a long time looking at old pieces of wood stacked neatly along the wall. His hands knew work. Building was something he understood better than talking. Slowly, an idea took shape. He did not ask her first. Not because he didn't respect her, but because he did not want to create pressure. He wanted the offer to be simple, something she could accept or refuse without explanation. Over the next several evenings, he worked quietly, measuring, sanding, adjusting edges until they were smooth enough to be safe. He took his time, making sure every joint was strong. This was not rushed work. It mattered to him that it be done right. As he worked, he thought about the baby growing older, about safety, about rest. He thought about how life could be hard enough without small discomforts added to it. He did not think about what it meant beyond that. He did not allow himself to. Meanwhile, she continued her routine unaware, tired but steady. Some nights she sat awake longer than usual, worrying about practical things, how fast the baby was growing, what she would do next. She pushed those worries aside as best she could. When the cradle was finished, he stood back and looked at it. Simple, strong, built to last, not fancy but made with care. He felt satisfied, not proud. Helping felt natural to him, the way breathing did. The next day he loaded it into his truck and drove toward her place. He did not plan a speech. He did not rehearse what to say. He believed actions should speak for themselves. She was outside when he arrived, baby in her arms, the late afternoon light soft around them. She looked surprised when she saw him pull up. "I noticed the baby's getting bigger," he said, lifting the cradle carefully from the truck. "Thought this might help." Not the polite smile she gave others, a real one that came from relief. "Thank you," she said. "This means more than you know." She watched him drive away, her heart full in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. Not because of romance, not because of promises, but because someone had seen her struggle and responded with kindness, without conditions. That night, as she laid her baby into the new cradle, she felt a deep sense of peace. The child settled easily, safe and comfortable. She rested her hand on the smooth wood and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, she did not feel alone. The cradle changed the rhythm of her days in small but important ways. The baby slept better, longer, and more peacefully. That meant she slept a little more too. Mornings no longer felt quite as heavy. She still worked hard, still worried about the future, but the sharp edge of constant tiredness slowly softened. Each time she placed the baby into the cradle, she thought of him. not in a romantic way but with a quiet gratitude that warmed her chest. The smooth wood, the steady balance, the care in every corner told a story without words. Someone had taken time. Someone had noticed. He did not come by the next day, or the day after that. He did not linger or wait for praise. That more than anything made his kindness feel real. He had given help, not attention. When she did see him again, it was by chance. She was returning from work, baby bundled close, when she noticed him repairing a fence not far from her place. She hesitated, then walked over. "The cradle works perfectly," she said. He smiled slightly. "Good." As days passed, their interactions became more natural, still quiet, still simple. Sometimes he stopped by to fix something she mentioned in passing, a door that stuck, a window that rattled in the wind. He always asked first. He always respected her space. She started to notice things about him too, how patient he was with his work, how carefully he listened when others spoke, how he never raised his voice even when things went wrong. There was a steadiness about him that felt rare. One evening she invited him to stay for a simple meal. It took courage for her to ask. She worried it might change the balance between them. He hesitated, then agreed. They sat at the small table, the baby sleeping nearby in the cradle. The house felt warmer than usual. They talked about ordinary things, work, weather, the land, no past stories, no deep questions, yet the silence between their words felt comfortable, not awkward, like two people who did not need to fill every moment to feel connected. After that night, the walls she had built around her heart did not fall, but they shifted slightly. She allowed herself to trust a little, not blindly, carefully. From his side, he felt the pull more clearly now. Being near her, seeing her gentleness with the baby, her quiet strength, stirred something deep inside him, but he did not rush it. He had learned long ago that real bonds grow slowly. He respected her journey. He knew she had been hurt. He knew trust was not something to be demanded. He showed up consistently, not every day, but enough to be dependable. When winter arrived, he made sure her place was ready. Extra firewood, insulated windows. He explained things, showed her how to fix small issues herself, never making her feel incapable. She appreciated that more than grand gestures. He did not try to take over her life. He simply supported it. The baby grew stronger, more curious. Small hands reached for everything. Small sounds filled the house. He began to spend more time on the floor, letting the baby grab his fingers, smiling when tiny laughs filled the room. She watched those moments closely. She noticed how gentle he was, how natural. There was no hesitation in him, no distance. He treated the child as if this was the most normal thing in the world. That touched her deeply. More deeply than words could. One afternoon, a storm rolled in suddenly, strong wind, heavy rain. She worried about the roof, about leaks she could not afford to fix. Before she could act, she saw his truck pull in. "I saw the clouds," he said. "Thought I'd check." She held the baby and watched, her heart filled with a strange mix of relief and emotion. Later, as rain hit the roof steadily, they sat inside, listening. The baby slept peacefully in the cradle, unaware of the storm outside. "This place feels safer now," she said quietly. He looked at the cradle, then at her. It already was. "You made it that way." She could simply be who she was, a mother, a worker, a woman learning to hope again. One evening, as she rocked the baby, she thought back to the day she had walked away from the wedding. The pain of that memory was still there, but it no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a turning point. If she had stayed, if she had chosen comfort over truth, she would never have known this kind of peace. This kind of steady, quiet care. He never asked her to choose, never asked her to change. He built space for her life rather than trying to fit her into his, and that made all the difference. She did not know where this path would lead. She did not name it. She did not rush it. But as she watched the baby sleep in the cradle he had built, with the storm passing safely outside, she felt something settle deep inside her. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that the future did not have to be frightening. It could be built, carefully, honestly, one small act of kindness at a time. Time moved forward quietly, the way it does when life is built on steady effort instead of big promises. Days turned into seasons, and seasons slowly reshaped everything around her. The baby grew stronger, more curious, filling the small house with movement and sound. First words came softly, then laughter, then endless questions that made her smile even when she was tired. The cradle remained in the corner, no longer used every night, but never moved away. It had become part of the home, part of the story. Sometimes she would run her hand along the smooth wood and remember the moment it arrived, how unexpected kindness had changed the direction of her life. He was there often now, not as a guest, not as someone passing through, but as someone whose presence felt natural. He never announced himself loudly. He showed up the same way he always had, calm, steady, reliable. If something broke, he fixed it. If something worried her, he listened. He did not try to solve everything. Sometimes he just sat with her in silence, and that was enough. The town noticed the change. People who once whispered now watched quietly. Some still judged, but others softened. They saw how well the child was cared for. They saw the peace slowly returning to her face. They saw how the cowboy treated them both, with respect, without hesitation. He never made a big declaration, never claimed a role he had not earned. But one day, without thinking much about it, the child reached for his hand instead of hers while learning to walk. The moment caught her breath. She watched as he knelt down, patient and careful, guiding those small steps with a gentle smile. From that day on, the bond was clear, not forced, not spoken, just there. They talked more openly as trust deepened, about fears, about the past, about mistakes made and lessons learned. She told him about the wedding day she walked away from, not with anger but with honesty. He listened without interruption, without judgment. "You did the right thing," he said simply when she finished. Those words healed something deep inside her, not because she needed approval, but because they came from someone who truly understood. Love did not arrive suddenly. It grew slowly, like the land he worked, through patience, care, and time. One evening, after a long day, they sat on the porch watching the sky fade into stars. The child slept inside, tired from play. "I don't want to rush anything," she said quietly. He nodded. "Neither do I." Just choice made freely every day. Years passed. The child grew into a bright, kind presence, full of curiosity and confidence. Questions came about family, about belonging. She answered honestly, always with care. And when the child asked why the cowboy was always there, she smiled. "Because he wants to be," she said. One day, the old cradle was brought out again. Not for sadness or memory, but for joy. It was clean, checked, and placed carefully in a new room. When she told him, she expected surprise. Instead, he smiled softly. "I built it to last," he said. That night, as they stood together looking at the cradle, she understood something clearly. The right person does not ask you to divide your life. The right person steps into it fully with respect. The past no longer hurt the way it once did. It had shaped her, taught her strength, guided her towards something better. She no longer wondered what might have been. She was living what truly was. Love, she learned, is not proven by words spoken on a special day. It is proven by hands that help, by presence that stays, by space made for every part of your life. And as she watched the family they had built, slowly, honestly, she knew that walking away had never been a loss. It had been the beginning.